Always.
Okay. All art is propaganda. That is what Mexican muralist Diego Rivera said. And he might have meant that in like the most extreme of ways, since he was a communist who housed the socialist Leon Trotsky for more than 2 years. And I agree with him that art can be political, not necessarily all of it, or that it all has the same degree of politicism in it, but it can be influential to audiences whether or not that is the intention of the artist. And so today I will illustrate for you the vast diversity of postmodernism with its politicism. I am talking about politicism, but first half will have to do with postmodernism, like the art history of it, one of my favorite movements of art. So modernism came before postmodernism, obviously. That began in the mid-19th century and captures the images and sensibilities of the time. And so this piece right here is Claude Monet. This is titled Jardin à Saint Adresse, and it's from 1967. You can see it's kind of like a clean picture, not really like as avant-garde as other pieces you might have seen. And so postmodernism is a response to this type of art, which can be seen as elitist. And so postmodernism is more encompassing and inclusive compared to this, which might have more rigid confines in definition. And postmodernism isn't always just traditional easel paintings. It can range from installations and performance art and sculptures. So Fred Kleiner, who's an art historian at Boston University, wrote a book titled Art Through the Ages. And he defined postmodernism as in response to in response to the elitist, uncompromising stance of modernism, postmodernism grew out of naive and optimistic populism. So even though postmodernism continued through the 70s, this piece here is from 1949 by Jackson Pollock. And basically, postmodernism begins post-World War II throughout the end of the 40s. This type of postmodernism is another category of postmodernism called abstract expressionism, and expressionism is a result of inner and self visions, basically, expressing yourself, but as the name suggests, it's abstract. And so this type is gestural abstraction, and let me shake the lights around. All right, this here is expressionism. This is abstract expressionism, particularly colored field abstraction, in which there's no lines or figures and basically just like big swatches of color. And so this one on the right is Henri Matisse. This one is Mark Rothko. About 40 years in difference there. Oops, let me skip one. So next is post-painterly abstraction. This is Green, Red, Blue by Ellsworth Kelly. And this is hard edge painting. Sharp lines, very neat. Color fielding I've described. Next is minimalism. This is not the whole thing, just this thing down the right here, which is Donald Judd, who said, "I'm not interested in the kind of expressionism that you have in painting with brushstrokes." So he created just plexiglass blocks that he hung on walls. And next, most of you might know, is pop art. This is Roy Lichtenstein. And pop art grew out of alienation from the beginning abstraction, which was supposed to be accepting, which is the definition of postmodernism, but people didn't really understand or grasp the concept of it. So pop art was reintroducing symbolism in mass media that people would understand, such as this is from a comic book, which Roy Lichtenstein liked to use, because he wanted to show that emotion could be conveyed through lol culture, which is easily accessed and inexpensive items such as magazines and comic books. Next is performance art. This is Marina Abramovich in her piece Rhythm Zero from 1974. She stood in a room for 6 hours with an accompanying table that had 72 objects on it. And so basically people could come up, take an object from that table, and do whatever what they wanted to her, and she would just stand there. What's the word I'm trying to say? She would just basically, she didn't interact back. Only the audience took part of this. And so by the end, someone put a loaded gun in her hand, but it was not fired. She's still alive. All right, and this is environmental art, created in 1970 by Robert Smithson, which is the same year that EPA was founded. And so environmental art grew out of growing concern for the earth and environment, which, as we all know, is deteriorating and will not always be able to handle the way humans treat it. This particular piece is called Spiral Jetty by Robert Smithson, 1970. And then that gets further political in feminist art by Judy Chicago. This is Dinner Table in 1979. She created this with stitchwork and needlepoint and also table setting, which traditionally is seen as traditionally practiced by women. And so she used this, originally just one side that she wanted. Oh, oops. One side was supposed to be 13 place settings as an all-female version of The Last Supper. But then she created it, she tripled it to 39 to create the triangle because she was interested in witchcraft, and the triangle is symbolism of women in witchcraft. And so next is Barbara Kruger, also feminist art, that's me there. She utilizes techniques used by corporations and advertising companies to sell consumer goods. She used these same techniques to get her messages across with concerning feminism. And this piece is Faith Ringgold, who used feminism, combats misogyny and racism. She's a black woman. In this piece, Who's Afraid of Aunt Jemima? Aunt Jemima is, the lady on the syrup bottle, who is also a stereotypical rendition of black nannies and housekeepers from the 60s. And so in this particular piece, she creates a family of Aunt Jemima, who's seen here, not the way we see on the syrup bottle. At the end of this story, she and her whole family are successful business people. Lastly, there's David Wojnarowicz. Oh, can't really see that. Just for a second. There's skeletal remains, and he wrote down his thoughts of seeing a loved one of his die from AIDS-related diseases. Basically, this piece is supposed to be combating homophobia and AIDS-related discrimination. This piece is from 1990, titled "When I Put My Hands on Your Body," because people with AIDS tend to lose a lot of weight and their body disfigures. Right, and so considering there's all these various, 10 or something different kinds of postmodernist art, it's kind of difficult to understand how all of it is seen in the postmodern label. But really, that's just, each of them is contributing to the definition of postmodernism and its willingness to be inclusive.
All right, Anthony, what did you think?
I thought it was a pretty good speech. He had really good eye contact with the audience, and it didn't really feel like he was reading off his notes that much. But there was a lot of ums and some kind of pauses, which was kind of awkward. But overall, I thought it was pretty good, and like I like the slides too. They all pertain to what he was talking about. They kind of helped give us a visual, since he was talking about art.
All right. Just giving you a chance. Anything else you got to say? No, you're good? All right. Well, I like the attention device. I like the quote that you have at the beginning and then your interpretation of what's going on. I thought you had made a nice transition to the purpose statement for the speech also. What's missing here is really a stronger preview. I mean, I generally know what the direction is that you're headed. I can see, however, once you get into the body of the speech, why there wasn't a better preview, because you have too many points, too many different movements. I'm going, okay, so we've got postmodernism, abstract expressionism, pop art, performance art, environmental art, feminist art, and then there were a couple more that I didn't even get written down. It's a long list of things that you do. You've got to find a way to maybe group those together a little bit so you condense it, and then it won't feel quite as much like a check-off list of each thing that you're going through. I like the idea that you had of, you know, the political element. I think that could be, for instance, one of the ways in which you divide the movements that you're talking about. You know, those that are primarily focused on visual aesthetics and those that have a political component to them. And then let's talk about those, you know, the one group first, and here are some examples of the particulars in that particular category, and then it would feel less like I'm just getting a long list of different movements, and more like that list of movements is classified and that you're explaining why it fits into that classification a little bit more. That's probably the way to maybe fix the issue that's going on here. I thought your explanations of most of the points were pretty good, but they're often a little bit quick because you've got another one that you've got to get to in the next minute. And I think this is a place where you need to make some choices, maybe. It would be a better idea to maybe pick 2 or 3 of the things that you're talking about here and really spend a little bit more time on them. The abstract expressionism thing, I'm looking at that and going, that looks like I would do before I painted anything. You know, in other words, is my tempera paint working on the brush? Click, yeah, there it is. Let's go to the other one. Click, there it is. Let's go. Yep, it's all working, and that's the art. And I'm going, there's got to be an explanation about why that people saw that as being important, how it was interpreted, what was different about it, what it meant, what its historical impact was. You mentioned the artist's name in a lot of these kinds of things, and so I'm wondering, okay, so how is it perceived? How is this person viewed? I think maybe if you pick like 3 of these categories that you had and then develop them a little bit more, the speech would be more interesting and successful in the long run. Although we got a lot of stuff. I mean, and I know that you're just probably enthusiastic. You want to talk about everything, and that comes across. By the way, I'd agree with Anthony about a presentation. You do a very good job speaking to us. You have to look at the notes occasionally. He mentioned the ums or uhs. I don't find those particularly annoying when they seem like they're coming out of a natural way of talking, as opposed to people who are just hesitating while they're waiting for the next note. Oh, and let me turn the page here. That really annoys me. But when you're talking about something and you just say, oh, and this other example here, that's not as big a deal because it's a more natural pause as opposed to just a vocalized interjection that's there to help you make a transition. Let me see here. The visuals I thought were pretty effective. For the most part, we didn't have to have the lights off, but when you turned the lights off, it helped in a couple of those spots. Like that one, we wouldn't have been able to see those colors and the abstract expressionism that you talked about without your turning off the lights. And the last one rushed by so very quickly, we don't get a chance to see what the words are all about, what the lettering on the picture is. We barely get a chance to see the image, and that's one of the drawbacks of trying to cover so much that it just feels like we're flashing through this instead of getting something that's a little bit more developed. It sounded like there was good research early on in the speech, and I don't doubt that there was content in the rest of the presentation, but I don't think it's being cited very consistently. And so you need to do that a lot more. All right, thank you.